This episode is sponsored by Old National Bank. Old National is committed to supporting minority-owned small businesses by helping to expand their access to capital through their Empowerment Small Business Loan Program.
Welcome to Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact. Each episode, we will cover legacy, hope, Black joy, funding sources, cultural shifts, equity, and so much more. We will provide inspiration and action while spreading some joy to a thriving community of Black business owners and leading thought leaders. Black Business Matters podcast is produced by the L3 Agency, a culturally sensitive influencer marketing and communications firm in Chicago, where relationships are our currency, passion is our profit maker, and people are our bottom line. I'm Larvetta Lofton, your host and founder of the L3 Agency.
Yup, because it's my party. And you're going to get up to seats. And when I say hello and good evening, you're going to say good evening with a little bit more energy. All right? Ready, set, go. Good evening. Good evening. Okay. All right. Thank y'all. I appreciate that. So we're switching up the order just a little bit because we all know, living in Chicago, this thing called weather can just hit us all, right? So our wonderful partner, sponsor, Old National Bank, I want to just tell you all just how it happened because I think it's important. I reached out to a dear sister of mine who works in D&I, Corliss, and I said, hey, I want a banking partner that will help minority business with capital, with lines of credits, with things that ultimately we're not able to get because of the biases. They're true, they happen. She introduced me to the senior vice president of Old National Bank. In all the years that I have been in this business, and I've been in this business for over 20 years, this man met with me, printed out my sponsorship one-pager and was like, what do you need me to do? That's how simple it was. He had read it over, he was clear, and he said, we want to partner with you. So with that, they are in Wisconsin, and Tracy Meeks from Old National Bank traveled here from Wisconsin because they're building a branch here in Chicago. It's coming, right? It's here. And so he took the train, but unfortunately, because of the bad weather, he's got to get back to Wisconsin to catch a train at 7:15. So if you guys will just give him a hand for just being here and supporting minority businesses. All right? He's going to say a few words before we get started because he's got to leave at 7:15, but he's going to share their commitment and some of the products that could be helpful for minority businesses, okay? So Tracy, come on over here. Tracy Meeks of Old National Bank.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about Old National Bank. We're very proud to sponsor tonight's podcast. A little bit about Old National Bank. We purchased First Midwest Bank out of Chicago, Illinois last year. First Midwest Bank was a $22 billion bank. Old National Bank was a $23 billion bank out of Evansville, Indiana. We have offices not only in Chicago, we have offices in Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Indiana. We just opened an office in Detroit, Michigan. We're in Kentucky, and we're also in Iowa. We're the third largest Midwestern bank in the nation, and we're very proud to launch what we call our Empowerment Small Business Loan Program, which is a loan program that's structured to provide access to capital for minority-owned businesses as well as women-owned businesses. And what we've done is we think outside of the traditional credit box. So normally you have a credit score of 680. Otherwise, regardless of how your business is, the deal's going to be dead. We have lowered that credit parameter to 620. We've also lowered equity requirements for new equipment purchases. We can finance 100% of a new equipment purchase for businesses, 80% for used. We can do 90% if it's owner-occupied. If your business owns the real estate, we can do 90% of real estate. The caveat to all this is as long as the business cash flows the debt, we're able to provide the financing. So again, we're very happy to be here tonight. Unfortunately, I need to get back up north where we have a lot of snow, but super happy to be here tonight and supportive of what Lavetta is doing and also supporting what the small business community here in Chicago, Illinois is doing. I'm gonna leave my materials over there. If you have any questions, feel free to pick up a business card. Be happy to come back down here to Chicago to meet with you individually. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. So I just wanted to take that pause because he's got to leave, but certainly stop over there if you want to pick up some information on Old National Bank. I want to make sure that was available, but I wanted him to have an opportunity to introduce himself. All right, so we are about to start. This is amazing to be able to go live with this podcast. And when I say live, guys, let me be clear. We're recording today, but we are going live because several people could not travel because of the bad weather. So we decided to stream for them. So we do have folks that are watching us virtually. So we're super grateful for that. All right, are we ready? All right. Welcome to our first live event episode of Black Businesses Matter. So today is very special because I have a live audience. I've never done this podcast with a live audience. So I have to tell you, I'm super nervous. But I will say I've got two guests here with me that are going to help me get through this episode. Before I introduce who we have today, I really want to take a time to discuss Black businesses. So many people ask me why I started this podcast. I started it merely because I didn't see a bridge for collaboration and connections in the space of services from an equity standpoint. So I felt like, why couldn't there be a podcast of thriving Black businesses where other folks can collaborate? You could be a supplier, you name it. Why can't we have that? And so that's why the podcast was started. So according to Google, there are more than 2 million Black-owned businesses in the U.S., which is close to the population of Chicago. So just marinate on that. It's 2 million Black businesses in the world, okay? The one thing that I found, and this is gonna blow your mind because it blew my mind, the largest Black-owned business in the country is Worldwide Technology. It provides IT to 45% of Fortune 500 companies. It employs more than 9,000 people globally and generates over $14.5 billion in revenue. His name is David L. Stewart. He is the founder, he is the chairman, and he is a civic leader and philanthropist, and he is located in Rosemont, Illinois. That should give us some love that this is happening right here in our state, in Illinois. So you can clap because I got a live on. You can clap, it's okay. When I read that, what I said was, and I've been saying this since Lanier Richardson was on our podcast, Chicago Trend was our sponsor, and he said, what would it look like if Black businesses were overfunded? Yeah, right? Operations is together, staffing is right, capital is together. What would that look like? So I knew that while I couldn't get David here, I needed to get two civic leaders who are committed to advocating, who are committed to investing in the efforts of economic inclusion for minority and Black-owned businesses. And so I have the pleasure of having Andrea Zopp, who is also known as Andy Zopp, who is leading Cleveland Avenue, which is right over there. They are a VC firm right here in Chicago, and their role is really investing in minority business. To my direct left, we have Marquis Miller, who is the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at the Obama Foundation. The Obama Foundation is literally steps away. So I want to make sure that we have a visual of the things that are happening right here in Chicago, because we don't always get that visual, I'm just saying. So the Obama Foundation mission is to inspire, empower, and connect people to change their world. So when I saw that all of you all are change makers, and the Obama Foundation is making sure that the businesses and the things that are going on, I believe, south and west sides of Chicago and globally are going to be impacted through the Obama Foundation. So, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, now that I've given you all this intro, because a lot of people, we've seen you. I know I have. But before we go into like all the stuff we put on our bios, what I want to ask is, Andy, what were you like as a little girl? What was your favorite subject?
So before I say what I was like as a little girl, I should make a minor correction because it's really important.
Okay.
So I don't run Cleveland Avenue. So Cleveland Avenue is founded, and our leader is Don Thompson. Don Thompson is the former CEO of McDonald's.
Yes.
And was founded by Don and his wife, Liz. Don, and we are a venture firm. We have several funds.
Okay.
I run one of our funds, which is called Cast Us, which is a fund that invests in Black, Latinx, and women-owned companies. So
Okay.
I just need to clarify and give Don and Liz their due.
Yes. Yeah, and thank you for that, because we did ask for Don, and Don said you.
So I am actually here in Don's stead, and he is an incredible leader and very passionate about the issues we're talking about today. So as a little younger person, I think my favorite subjects were, I love reading and I love history.
Okay.
I love learning about where we came from and what happened before and how things happened and understanding what came that led up to where we are today. So I was a student of history and a reader.
Okay.
I've always been a big reader.
Oh, so books. You love books.
I love books.
Yes.
I do.
Yes, Andy. I love books too. Marcus, what were you like as a little boy?
My story is very similar to Andy's in that I was a big fan of history, but I didn't come to it naturally. My mother was a history teacher, and she taught Black history in the public schools in Columbus, Ohio. As I started to learn more about our history, I decided that it was something that I wanted to really dig into because I was always trying to please my mom. I'm the first to admit I was a mama's boy, but it was really my wanting to be more like someone who knew all the things that you needed to know about where you came from.
Okay. And the reason why I bring up as a little girl, because full circle, some of that is what you do and how you serve. And so in connecting that, so I want to talk about how do you view, both of you all have been instrumental leaders in Chicago, and quite frankly, doing the work that you all doing is global impact, because I believe anything we're doing online is global impact. So when we think about that, I want to ask you, how do you view Black businesses today from 25 years ago?
I did jot a few notes down, so if you don't mind, I'm going to sneak a peek at my notes because I wanted to make sure that I was being as precise in answering the questions.
I appreciate that.
I'm actually celebrating my 26th anniversary as a Chicagoan.
Wow.
I came here in January of '97, and one of the first meetings that I had was at 820 South Michigan Avenue. That was in the offices of Johnson Publishing Company with Johnson Publishing founder John Johnson. He was on the United Negro College Fund board, and I had come to be the head of the Midwest region. And the reason I share that is because today, Johnson Publishing is no longer in existence. And that's just 26 years ago. I know a lot has happened, but there are a lot of businesses, and I don't mean this as a negative, it's just as a marker of where we are from a historical standpoint. Johnson Products, Harpo Studios, Gladys's Luncheonette, Seaway Bank, even Shore Bank, which, not being Black owned, made significant loans and investments in Chatham, South Shore, and Grand Crossing. All of those businesses are gone. When I think about what the landscape looks like today, is while there are a lot more firms that are in place and have actually taken some of those businesses places, they're in retail and hospitality, which track with the sobering fact that minority firms and Black-owned firms in particular tend to have fewer than 5 employees.
Yep.
And so this term, some of you may know, a soulpreneur, it becomes really relevant because it's where you exist, and it's not just an access to capital issue. There are some more systemic issues. And so when I think about the 26 years I've been here, I've seen a lot of change take place, but I'm also very hopefully and positive about where we're headed.
Yeah. I'm glad that you bring up Johnson Publishing Company, because I remember as a young journalist, just in the broadcast journalist space, is that I just saw myself as I'm going to do business with Johnson & Johnson. It just was very easy. And so to know that it's gone away, it hurts. Let me say this. It has bothered me as a creative, because writing and reading and those things were taken away and we don't have them. And then the other part was, I love to see the jet. Like when it came out, you were like, who's on there? And driving past on Michigan Avenue, because I did grow up not too far from there. So just knowing that and missing that, it is something that, and it talks about it from a service. That was a service-based business, right? They didn't necessarily, they were service-based, they had products, but initially they were a service-based business. Andy, would you like to bring some perspective to that?
So I would really just build on what Marcus said. And John Rogers talks about this. If you heard him speak, he talks about this topic all the time, about the importance of supporting but growing Black businesses and not getting them stuck in this little circle of being just getting that little portion of that piece of that pie that we have to split with all other minorities from large corporations. Yeah. And he talks about these large leading Black businesses like Johnson Publishing, like Seaway Bank, like Softsheen, that were multi-million-dollar, $100 million businesses, and those and entrepreneurs where there was wealth. And then what happens when you have that wealth is then those people build wealth in others, whether it's their employees, whether it is other businesses that they start, whether it's loans from their bank, but you have this virtuous cycle within the community. And we've lost a lot of those large-scale businesses and then their leaders who have wealth that they can then reinvest. And so it becomes really important to focus on not just supporting Black businesses, but growing them and having them be sustainable so that you are really literally building wealth back into those businesses who will then put that wealth back into the community, because we hire, we lend credit, just like in Cleveland Avenue, where we have a fund focused on this issue, but Cleveland Avenue writ large focuses on returning wealth into the Black community. So I just think that's the tragedy of where we were 25 years ago from where we need today. If you look at the list in Black Enterprise magazine of the top Black companies, the number of them that were in Chicago has dramatically declined. And we have to fix that.
And Margaretta, let me build on and amplify what Andy's saying. And again, I always try to couch my comments in a very positive light. Being a solopreneur is a wonderful and beautiful thing, especially when you've got bills to pay, clothes to put on your back, et cetera. The challenge that I'm speaking to, and one that she's further articulated, is businesses that are doing well and can hire employees, pay those employees who can then spend money in various communities. The economic development people call that the direct effect. The indirect effect is those individuals, by spending money with other businesses, help those businesses also hire employees. But then there's an inferred effect where that employee then gives money to their children, and the children can then go out and spend money. And we all know how big the youth market is for almost every consumer good. It's those kinds of things that I'm optimistic that we can get back to, and we can do this without sacrificing the opportunity to have access to markets that we historically didn't have 25 years ago, let alone 50 years ago.
As a unit, and I say this on the podcast, Black business owners are the largest employers of Black people. And so when you take that as one unit, we are making an impact. And so creating that and understanding the value of collaborating with a Black business because they're bringing other Black people as part of your supplier and the ecosystem. Kim Lewis, who was here from Curl Mix, I remember your episode, and I remember it because it was an episode that she said, you find joy when your Black employees can go out and buy a house because they're employed by this amazing Black leader. And I remember when you shared that. And that was important because we don't see the other side. You see this side, but you don't see the impact that allows for wealth and people to purchase home, buy cars, whatever it is, purchase more businesses. We've never been able to see that and see that as in entirety, because for someone who has a marketing company, I remember Burrell is still here, but the impact that Burrell was able to do on my life is so important. So what for us is, what's the impact can we do for somebody else? And that's the way that, to me, is how we get back to that, is making sure that, I can say this, that we're collaborating, that we're bringing in firms to collaborate for bids so that there is opportunities around there. And so I want to talk through, for some of you, you've got solopreneurs in here. You've got, hey, I want to start a business. You've got, hey, I've got 5 employees. But here's what I'm hearing that isn't, is that how do we scale to grow to be able to say, hey, I'm ready to exit. I'm ready to sell. I'm ready to go and explore something else. How can business owners be able to do that and do that in a way that says, for many of us, it's like, I don't want to look as if I failed because I'm deciding to, and we know just with our dear Mayo Organics and what happened there. But when I saw this worldwide company as a technology firm, what it told me is that we don't get to see these stories. We don't get to see those stories of enterprise. So I want to say this, how can businesses start to scale and grow without having to deal with all the other things? How can you do that? Is that even if that's even possible?
Sure. Of course it's possible. I think, first of all, I just want to circle back to something else Marcus said. I do think, let's know that not every business needs to become a multi-million-dollar business. There is a space in every economy for strong neighborhood businesses, for businesses where people grow them to support their families. But for those companies, for those entrepreneurs who are thinking through, I want to start my business and then I want to grow it, there's a couple fundamental things. The first is you have to have your house in order. You have to have, if you're going to ask other people about growing your business, eventually what you're doing is asking other people to give you money, to invest, either whether they're giving you money as a loan, whether they're giving you money as an investment, you're asking them to give you money. They therefore expect that you have your house in order. And what that means is you're keeping track of your numbers. What are you paying? Your expenses. What are you paying for your employees? How are you managing your expenses over time and your business and your market? And so knowing your business and having your house in order, any investor, any bank is going to ask you those things. So the first is, and there are lots and lots of places, we are very blessed in Chicago to have a very strong entrepreneurial support community. And so if you don't necessarily have to know that, but there are a number of organizations from the Urban League, the Women's Business Development Center,
Sunshine
where we
Enterprise.
sit right now in Polsky. There are a number of places that can help what you need to know to put a business plan together and then execute on it.
Yeah.
And then so that's number one. And then the second thing is you have to know what kind of money you want. Capital comes in a number of different forms. There's debt, where you take a loan and then you pay interest on the loan and you pay it back. There's debt that people can invest if they're investing in your business, where it's a loan, but you don't pay it back in cash. You pay it back. You pay the interest, and then when at one point it becomes equity, it's called convertible debt. So people get an interest in your business. There's an investment where people take a percentage of your business up front as part of the investment. So there's a number of ways. And again, there are places that can educate you on what those pieces are and those steps are. But the short answer is that for Black people, right now, it is still very hard to get capital.
That's right.
It just is. It is. We get a shocking, I think the percentage, the last time I looked at the number, I don't have 2022 numbers, but 2021 was under 2% of all capital invested, venture capital invested in business. Black businesses got under 2%. That's offensive. And so there are challenges, but they are surmountable. More and more Black entrepreneurs are getting investments, are turning and getting investments, 7-figure investments. That is happening. And Kim herself raised $6 million in a crowdfunding investment from her.
Yes.
So we can turn to other ways, but it is still a bit of a challenge.
So I want to say this because the information that you've provided, I think, is just helpful for all of us to be able to understand the different levels. Because when we throw out capital, I think we did some research. People thought, oh, you're giving me money. Yeah, but you've got to come to the table with something. And so because you guys work for a VC firm, there's businesses. What should they have? I mean, have your home in order, but is there any thing that you can tell them before they get there so that because I think our feelings become hurt, right? Oh my gosh, they turned me down. This means my business is horrible. We all take on that. So how can we prepare for that meeting with the VC because it's intimidating. It's just intimidating.
Of course it is. I think, as I said, the start is to know your business, understand, what it is you're making, selling, doing. Is it a service, your product, how you're pricing it, and be able to track it, to be able to show, here's what we did in the last year. Here's our revenue, here's our expenses, here's what I would use the money for. Also understand, a lot of times people think venture investment, we are not trying to buy your company from you. We are making an investment in your company. We want you to grow your company. And if you grow your company, my investment, the value of my investment in your company will grow. And at some point, hopefully, we will what we call monetize, and whether that is going public or whether that is somebody buying me at Mail, got bought by purchase, and then that investment was then monetized, and I got paid back hopefully for the people who invest in Mail, that's significantly more than you invested in the company, which is the goal. That's different from something called private equity, where they buy a majority interest in the company and then try and do things in the company to make it more valuable, and then they sell it. So it's a different thing that's different from debt. So you've got to understand the different things. And in terms of what do you need to do to go and talk to somebody, I think it's about the founders and entrepreneurs who do well know their business. They know their market. They know who their competitors are. They know and they have a plan to succeed. And so that's what investors want to know. They want to, typically for venture investors like us, we're investing in the founder.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
We're investing in the entrepreneur. We believe in them, that they can do what they want to do. And the more that they bring to the table to show that, the more likely you are. And that's, of course, why it's a challenge for Black people, because we always have to prove more. People aren't going to just invest in an idea. You have to do more, bigger, better. We're working to fix that. That's why Cleveland Avenue exists, to help fix that issue. That's one of the reasons we exist. But it's still a challenge. So I want to be honest with people that it is not an easy space.
It isn't. It isn't. And I think some people run from it. They don't go to VC because it is intimidating. It seems challenging. It's hard. But just being able to have you to be able to help us understand it in terms that we can understand it, I think is helpful.
And Roberta, when you and I first got connected, I was with the National Minority Supplier Development Council, which some of you may know exists to certify Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American owned and operated businesses. It is a 50-year-old model that still persists for businesses that want to ostensibly grow and do business with corporate America. But one of the things I learned in that experience is that there's a couple of things, and this actually ties to not only what Andy shared, but also ties back to your initial question. There are really three really fundamental things that people need to know, and they're really simple. First, you have to have the ability to get the work. A lot of times when I tell people that, they say, well, what do you mean? It means that you need to be able to actually go out and market your services or whatever goods that you're providing, because if you can't do that, or if you, worst case, can't find a market for what you think people want, then you're not going to have any success at all getting anyone to invest in you. Secondly, you need the ability to actually do the work. If you can't do the work, and that means not just doing it, but doing it on time and on budget, because that's the world we operate in, then you're going to have a hard time getting people to invest in your business. But then third and finally, and this might seem like it's very simple, but it's a tough concept for some people, you need the ability to get paid. Now, I say that as the final step, because if you can get the work because you've got a sound business development strategy, or maybe you've got a product that everybody wants, and then you're able to actually do the work because people want that service or they want that good, you still need to be able to get paid. And so if you can do those three things, then you have to be cognizant of the fact that, as has already been said here, it's okay to be a solopreneur. But you have to remember that some of the people that you might want to do business with are not thinking about you as a solopreneur as much as they're thinking about how much or how capable you are at solving their problem.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, people want to do business with you because you can either help them make money, help them save money, or you can help them innovate. And in the supply chain world, that still exists. What people are looking for, they're looking for that entrepreneurial spirit, which is why the solopreneurs can often get into doors, can actually get meetings that people will take. But then they get challenged on, okay, if you're a solopreneur, then how are you going to be able to do work, and get paid? That then means that you have to start to think about yourself as an entrepreneur, and that entrepreneur can be both a solopreneur or can be a small business of X number of employees. But even there, to ascend to some of the levels where I've talked to people who've been really frustrated about the challenge of raising capital and actually getting their businesses underway, you have to think about what it means to actually become a business. And that means your actual formation. And Andy was really speaking to this in terms of having your house in order. But there's a lot of folks out there who are LLCs who haven't really understood what the LLC means, but it's easy. I'm not saying that to call anybody out, but you have to be really careful about your business structure and your business formation, because that can be a barrier for you when you try to go get funding, especially if you're trying to go get debt funding from financial institutions. But then you get to the ultimate level, which is the supplier level. And the reason I've always articulated it as separate from all the others is because suppliers look and operate a certain way. In fact, in today's environment, if you can't do EDI or electronic data exchange, you can't get paid because people don't write checks anymore. And so while that may seem like, yeah, we already know that, the reality is there are a lot of people who
still don't.
I don't want to say they still don't, but they don't really factor in how significant those simple steps are. And I always like to offer that to folks because it can make or break you.
When I say that's powerful, there's businesses that I work with, and I say, well, we have an accountant. We cannot do this. We have to pay, you have to submit your information. It's not just, hey, you're going to come to me, I'm going to give you a check. Unfortunately, I'm not there anymore. So we have to account for that money. But I don't think that we know those different resources. And so when you say get your house in order, I think making sure you have these professional services, accounting, marketing, tech, HR, all of those services are important as you continue to build that business. I do want to ask you, Marcus, because you're in this role at the Obama Foundation, and I'm just going to be 100 because I'm in the space of marketing, right? I'm noticing that this space of marketing is all D&I. It's diversity, it's inclusion, it's equity. I hear it. I've been hearing it all my life, seriously. So that's nothing new because of the space that I've had to work in. But I want to specifically talk about what is equity? Because when we think about it from the standpoint of making sure we're not all starting at the same time. We're all not starting. Every business in here started at a different point. What is equity and how is the foundation really moving that as what I believe will be one of the biggest attractions and destinations, the Obama Library, for Chicago. So I want you to really dig, because you've come from the city from diversity and equity. So really help us understand what that means for business owners, because I don't think that we understand that.
Well, the big idea from an equity perspective is when you think about it, not in terms of the equity that investment organizations like Cleveland Avenue are involved in, and that's a very, very important understanding of equity. It's really in framing it in terms of equity being both a process and an outcome. The way we define it at the city, and this is generally the way it shows up in both government and in institutions, is it's about making sure that people have what they need to thrive without regard for their circumstances. And so the concept of racial equity is based on people being able to thrive without regard for race. Gender equity without regard for gender. Mm-hmm. Ability equity, health equity, all those things are about people being able to thrive, but we've conceptualized it as a process and an outcome because the process of equity is somewhat similar to the equity/ownership idea for investments, in that everybody's got a piece of this and everybody has responsibility for guarding and growing that piece. In fact, when you think about neighborhoods and some of the work that Andy was party to when she was in City Hall and work that I was involved in the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, it really is about making sure that people are seen as asset-laden rather than deficit-laden. And that extends in the business context as well. But it also suggests that for people to see themselves and for those organizations that persist to want to be there to help, but haven't really thought about the reality that these are individuals, these are organizations that are experts in their own experience. So rather than going into a community, going into a business setting and telling people this is what you need to do because I know better, it's actually doing the co-creation that's necessary for people to actually invest in themselves. And thus you get the process, but you also get the outcome, because the outcome is more people, more organizations, more businesses have the opportunity to thrive because they're now able to participate in a different way economically. And so for the foundation, it's economic equity. It's making sure that we have people that come from the neighborhoods where we know people have had challenges of working on the job, focusing on workforce development so they have the skills that are necessary to not just work on the presidential center, but once that construction is over, go out and get another construction-related job or transfer those skills to another business sector, whether it's manufacturing or it's professional services. And then to Andy's earlier point, John Rogers, who's been a very, very long time and vocal proponent for this concept of business equity, it's looking for where do those businesses show up in terms of how we're represented, especially in professional services.
Yeah.
So that's not just about who you're doing business with and whether they are a brand name, but are they bringing diversity to the services that they're providing. And we're really, if not focused, we're maniacally focused on that because we know that's the president's legacy. That's what people are expecting from us. And this has, as crazy as it sounds, very little to do with the presidential center as a building itself. It has everything to do with the lasting legacy of those activities in that neighborhood and then that ripple effect throughout our business community.
We see these RFPs for those, the requests for proposals. We think about that. We see those things come through. It's, again, I'm going to use this word, intimidating. They're looking for X, they're looking for Y, they're looking for this. And so oftentimes we put the RFP in place, but we knew we weren't going to get it because somebody else already got it, but it was formality. So Marcus, in those cases, how can business owners who are looking to be able to work on those RFPs, how can they get that business? Because we know that it's the same 5 people. Like, it's the same people. All right, maybe it's just me, but it's the same 5 people that are getting this business. And I want us to be very honest and very transparent that what do we need to do to be able to get these contracts, to be able, for those that do want to get to that billionaire status. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but what steps? And I will say this, Marcus, you were very instrumental. You sat with me 9 years ago, 10 years ago, and told me what to do, and I have done it. Everything that you have said, I've done it. So I 100% appreciate your level of expertise and mentorship to be able to understand that if you want to play in this game, you got to make sure your house is right. So I appreciate what you had to do, what you told me. But for everyone else, being clear about how do we do it? Like, it's the 4 people. Do we collaborate with those 4 people? Do we take them out to coffee? Do we take them out to lunch? Like, what do we need to do?
So you've actually hit on all of those key points because we can never, ever forget that all businesses are made up of people. And some of you may know this from participating in tips clubs, if that's still a thing. I'm a man of a certain vintage. Tip clubs used to be people that showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning for coffee and they shared information about who's coming to town, what businesses are expanding, those kind of things. Now I think that happens more digitally, but the point I'm getting at is people are still people and people do business with people that they know, trust, and respect.
That's
KLTR.
Right.
Now,
that's right.
Even having said that, you still run into situations where it's daunting to take up time from your business to participate in an RFP, to have to get certified, to have to chase down business. That's why you have to be crystal clear about what your business is and what you're trying to get accomplished. So I go back to, you need the ability to get work, do work, and get paid. If you can't do any one of those 3 things, or I'll even be more succinct, if you can't help your customer make money, help them take costs out of their business, or show them how your product or service is innovative, then it's okay that you are doing this on the side and you got a full-time job and it's just hadn't been happening. But you got to be so clear that those things you just talked about, taking people to lunch, taking them to coffee, that's working on your business.
It is.
And once you are able to do that, then it becomes a little bit easier to get your business done. And then over time, you start to find that, hey, I got enough capital that I can put some people on. I can have them do some of these functions while I work on the business, bringing in more business. And then because I happen to know Andrea Zopp, I can go talk with her about perhaps making a strategic investment in our business because this product or service that we have, we really think deserves a wider audience.
But the other piece there is about the relationships is, particularly if you're responding to an RFP, but if you have the relationships, part of that response is, what do they really want? What are the things that are going to move them in a decision-making process? And so what's important to them? So if you talk to Marcus, he just shared a few things that are super important to the foundation. So if you hear that, then you know that one of the things that the foundation supports a lot is joint ventures, right? So if you don't have the capacity, but you bring a partner on, that's a win-win for them. They love that. And so, but
Andy, can you just say that for the people? Because we realize we don't want to bring that additional partner, right? For some, and I'm being clear, Black business, we hold stuff. I'm scared. I got control, like for real. So when that partner comes in, it's releasing that so that it can grow. So I think it goes back to realizing that I just believe we can do more together than we can apart. That's just my motto about that.
But that's,
right?
I mean, and it's not just the Obama Foundation. More and more companies are open to joint ventures particularly between minority business, to take on bigger pieces of work. So you're not stuck with a small piece because your company doesn't necessarily have the capacity. And so I think it's important to think that through, but the relationship piece is not just about building a relationship because so they know you and like you, but also so that you can get information, so that you can have a better response. You're not just lobbing in an RFP guessing. And it's like anything else in life, right? It's like talking to people and building those relationships before they need you.
That's
and so that when they need you, that's when they call you.
I totally agree. Totally. I do want to ask you, Marcus, specifically around how are you all advocating, as in the foundation, to help with the advancement for Black businesses with the foundation? I'm hearing people like, actually someone else was they were completing an RFP that was out for the Obama, I think the library or the foundation. It's due tomorrow. Actually.
Is that the food and beverage?
Yes, the food and beverage. Yeah. So she was not able to do it because she was finishing up that this evening. So how are you able to advocate? Because oftentimes what I hear is, yep, I submitted, but never got the feedback. So that you can know how to do it better the next time. So how are you able to advocate for those Black businesses that could potentially, or if not, how can people get people within the foundation to tell them what you should have on that?
My role is still relatively new. I've been in it since July 18th.
Right. That's right.
Not that I'm keeping track. And so part of my remit to the organization is to map that process and to be a partner with our procurement team.
Okay.
And with our presidential center team, which includes a focus on workforce, as well as on, again, the folks that are actually building the center. For things like the food and beverage, what we've been trying to encourage people to do is to joint venture, because very often we know people don't have the scale that's necessary for servicing a project like ours. That doesn't mean that they don't have the willingness, but we know that we're going to be serving a certain number of people. They're going to need to have not just high-level, high-quality services rendered. There are mechanisms and processes that have to be in place. We also have requirements that are placed upon us by city government, by the state, all the things that you can imagine all other businesses have to go through. The same is true, especially if you're serving food. And so what we've encouraged people to do, and have embedded this into our business diversity policy, is we are insisting on a minimum of 40% participation.
Okay.
And we, right now, for the presidential center...
Wait, let me be clear. Minimum 40% minority participation in RFPs?
Yes, so don't show up for any opportunity with the presidential center or with the foundation if you don't have a minority participation. If you happen to already be a minority, that's not a requirement. But one of the things that we've been encouraging people to do, and I've actually spoken to a couple of people directly, find a partner because it's going to be a really big project and we want people to be successful.
Yeah.
We think that the success is going to be such that partnership will spin into an opportunity for one or both of those partners to take on bigger projects. Part of it is branding. Part of it is the actual track record that you can show that said, I was able to do this or this other thing. I mean, as much as people used to joke about Magic Johnson becoming a business owner, he built a partnership with Sodexo, and now Sodexo Magic is cornering the market when it comes to food service. And they're not the only one. And that's just one example.
Yeah, that's a great example, because when that happened, I mean, he was like, everybody's going to go to the concessions, drink a cup. I just thought it was brilliant and solved the problem. He solved the problem from that. I know that we're wrapping up soon, and I want to make sure that we have time for a question, because we want to make sure that there's a pressing question that you have. And I want to clarify question, because we've got time for one question. If anyone has a question, we'll take one question and then we'll wrap it up. Does anyone have a question? Because what I don't want to hear is, I had a question and I couldn't ask my question. Okay, no questions. No questions.
I got a question.
Okay.
I want to ask Andy, what is the best way for people not specific to Cleveland Avenue, but to approach
a VC, right?
A VC and feel like they went away with something that they could actually work from? Because everybody's not going to get money right off the bat, but it's part of a process, and I think it's going to be helpful for people to get a sense for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, most VC firms are not in the business of working to advise companies on how to get better. We do some of that. That typically we have a website, people submit to the website, can submit to our website, and we'll look at it and see whether or not it fits with us. And sometimes if we think it's close, and we'll meet with them, and if it doesn't work out, we will then say, here's what we're looking for, here's why it doesn't work, here's what we need to see, or we'll wait, come back in a year, we'll talk to you later. Most VC firms will just say no.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you want to go to the VC firms, but there are lots of places. There are pitch competitions you can participate in, and incubators where investors and people who do invest will sit down and say to you in more detail about your specific business, here's what works to me, here's what doesn't work for me, here's what I think investors will ask you. And that's why I encourage you to, if you're thinking about how do I grow my business, to do some research on what's available in the Chicago area to support small businesses, because there is a lot. There's a food incubator called The Hatchery. There's a manufacturing incubator called M-Hub. There's a health sciences incubator. It's not incubator, but a support organization called Matter. There are lots of places that are providing support, particularly for Black businesses, where you can kind of sit down and apply to a program. There's TechRise, there's TechStars. There's a lot of places you can go to look for support, to learn, to get that basic education that you need to think through how you want to grow your business. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Most VCs they're not in the business of providing that kind of information or support, and that's okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's kind of like actors will tell you the same thing, right? When they audition, they walk in, they go, yes, no, MP, they leave. They don't go, here's what we didn't like, and it's very similar, so.
I think that's a good example of helping us understand that, because there are certain people that will say, well, they didn't fund me and I don't think my business was great, and they'll take that. And so I think it's helpful to be able to share that. So as we wrap up, we always ask two questions. Why do Black businesses matter?
Black businesses matter because we have to have strong economic support in our community. We need to have a strong middle class that will grow and invest. As you said this, Black businesses hire and support Black people. But Black businesses matter because our community matters, and they're a core part of growing and building a strong, stable Black community.
Yeah.
Black businesses matter because with the technology revolution we've experienced in the last 30 years, and the fact that we are far more global than we've ever been, and even more than most of us have imagined, Black businesses have always needed to be innovative. And it's that innovation that makes it possible for us to realize so many more of our dreams in this really global economy. I mean, the ability to communicate with people all around the world with your watch. There's a lot of Black business that went into the creation of the Apple Watch. And all of those types of innovations, what's going to make all of our communities better, and not the least of which is the ability to put people to work.
And I think the other question that we ask, because we find that we are not able to also share our Black joy. So what brings you joy, Andy? What brings you joy?
Seeing people thrive, seeing people who have ideas and seeing them be able to take those ideas and turn them into something powerful brings me joy.
Yeah. What about you, Marcus?
I would echo that 8,000%. I'm a servant leader that believes that I was placed here on this earth to help people become their best selves. Yeah. And when that happens, that's where I get my joy.
Yeah. Well, guys, it has truly been a pleasure to have you all here. For me to host this is the very first live event for the podcast, and this has brought me joy. So thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all for saying yes, because I'm just going to say this. As I was sitting here and I was building this podcast during COVID, I never saw that I would ever get here. So it is truly what, to Andy's point of just bringing that vision to reality. So I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening to our first live episode. It was amazing. It was an outstanding episode. So thank you for tuning in and listening in on this new episode in support of Black History Month. We were just in awe with the connections that were made at the event. So we can't wait to do it again. There will be another one. So please stay tuned and keep rocking with us. Thank you to our listeners. We thank you for subscribing and following to our podcast. There's so much more that we get to share in this season. This is season 4. As I've mentioned to you, you are in for another treat in what we're going to talk about equity as it relates to content development. So we're bringing some developers, people who just are managing their content, and how equity plays a role in that. And we're excited to have a partner for this season, which is Old National Bank. They were a sponsor of our event, and they are partnering with us on this season. So you're going to hear more information about them and how you can partner with them for some of your products, financial products, etc. So I just want to say thank you all for listening to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. Until next week, be great. And don't forget to spread some of that joy.
This episode is sponsored by Old National Bank. Old National is committed to supporting minority-owned small businesses by helping to expand their access to capital through their Empowerment Small Business Loan Program.
Thank you for joining us this week on Black Businesses Matter podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen so you will never miss a show. You can also follow us on social media at the L3 Agency and at Larvetta Speaks. If you love the show, leave a rating so that we can continue to bring you impactful episodes. You can also take the pledge and order our merch at our website at thell3agency.com. THEL3agency.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.